Hey everybody, Eric Hayden here on YouTube. Breezy evening, and it's hard to imagine, but we're expecting another frost in our area over the next couple days. Luckily not quite as cold as we were a couple weeks ago when we got down to 24. Today's video is going to be all about mulch. Do you put a mulch down in your garden? Most of you probably say yes. Do you put it down to prevent weeds? Most of you probably say yes. You may be surprised to know that mulch doesn't help out a ton with weed prevention. Does it help? Yes, a little bit. Does it help if you apply a real thick layer? Yes. But the two things mulch helps do a little bit better are soil moisture retention, so it kind of keeps the soil more moist and not as likely to dry out. The other thing it does is it modifies the temperature. It keeps the soil from getting super hot or super cold, so it kind of averages out the extremes. Those are two good properties of mulch. A third property, depending on what you put down, it can give back to the soil. And that's what I want to talk about today. What kind of mulch do you use? So for us in the South, we're in eastern North Carolina, the mulch of choice for a lot of folks is pine straw. I grew up in Maryland, lived in upstate New York, and I gotta admit, I knew nothing about pine straw. So the first year we did roses, we put down the pine straw. It's perfectly fine, I'm nothing against it. It's a good source down here, so it is relatively cheaper compared to the other mulches. Wherever you live, whether you're in the United States or overseas, your source, if you're close to it, is going to really determine how costly it is. So for us, pine straw is pretty cheap. So I still use it in areas where I don't care as much about. And what I mean by that is it's just such a big area. This area I'm showing you here now, I don't want to spend all the money to mulch it in with like a pine nugget mulch or something like that. So where our azaleas are, a couple climbing roses, and our blueberries, they like acidic soil. The pine straw works perfectly fine. And we put it down a couple times a year and it works just fine. So that's a type of mulch that you can use. Another type of mulch that we use here, especially in my area, is called Cypress. And for the first time ever, I actually paid to have mulch dumped in the driveway last year, spring of 2020. We were all at home, staying safe. And I bought 7 cubic yards of this Cypress blend mulch. And it is very nice. It's got a blonde color to it. This is natural. I saw no issues with it. Was put down again a year ago. Excuse the bags. We'll talk about those in a second. But the mulch from last year is still there. So this is a mulch that tends to break down very slowly. So I was very happy with it. However, centipede lawn is very light color. It's a light green. You'll never get it to be a dark green like your Kentucky bluegrass and your northern grasses. And because of that, there's a good contrast on the left. This is centipede, on the right, Cypress mulch. I just don't like a light mulch. So this year I decided to do a little something different. I should say one more thing before I get to the bag mulch. Some other mulches I've tried in the past, grass clippings, they work perfectly fine. They're free. They come from your yard. You have to watch out for weed seeds, and you don't want to use long clippings that maybe you just sprayed with an herbicide. I have used kind of a sea mulch down here, a coastal grass. Grasses are fine. They tend to break down really quickly. Again, usually they tend to be cheap. One of my favorite mulches was in New York, in Endicott, New York. The town collected the leaves in the fall, and then they deposited them on an old airport runway, and they turned it once a week, and they made something called leaf mold. It's not a compost because nothing else is in it, just ground up leaves, and they're decomposed leaves. So you take a leaf like this oak leaf, and with time and aeration it'll break down. I applied that in New York. It was also cheap, i.e. free, but it disappeared right away. By the end of the summer it was certainly gone. However, it was great for adding to the soil. So I've mentioned a lot of different types: cypress, pine, straw, grass clippings. I'm an organic fan. You'll notice one thing I didn't mention is rock. I am not a fan of rock as mulch. Does it do what, does it help maybe, with soil moisture retention? Maybe a little bit. But here, with our temperatures getting so warm in the summertime, the soil can get really hot with those rocks, and you're not giving back to the soil. So before I get to the brown mulch that I have all around the garden, as you can clearly see, this is one reason why I stopped doing the pine straw in the rose garden. Pine straw is fine, but it's not giving anything back. Very slow to break down, and unlike a bark mulch, it's not giving back. And what I mean by that, this cypress mulch that I put down, or that leaf mold I mentioned, or grass clippings, as it breaks down, you do have to replace it, which does stink in terms of, you have to work the soil again, but is giving back, and you're providing humus to the soil itself. So you're providing organic matter to the soil. And as I dig down in here, the last couple days I've noticed, of course, not when I do this video, I've noticed that I have a lot more worms in my soil since I did an organic mulch. So that's something to consider. That's why I'm not a huge fan of rocks, because they're not giving back to the soil, and I'm not a huge fan of the pine straw. So what did I do this year? It's the standard brown mulch that you get at the big box stores. And this was a tough decision. I'd rather go natural, which this cypress is. If I wanted a darker color in our area, the only option is for dyed cypress, red, black, brown. I really wanted a hardwood. That's what we put down at my parents' house. If you look at one of the prior videos, that's what I'm used to up north. So I would prefer a hardwood mulch. The big box stores don't really carry it down here. They only had a few bags. The big thing down here is dyed mulch, and I'm not a huge fan. I don't like the red or black. I just didn't like something that was unnatural. However, the more and more I read, dyed mulch is not a huge deal, so I decided to give it a try. The other reason why I decided to give it a try, it was $2 a bag. That's right, 2 cubic foot bag was only $2 at one of our local box stores. So I got 60 bags, which is about 4.4 cubic yards of mulch, and I have put about 6 of them down so far. So I got a lot of work on my hands. So I'll do an update later in the year and show you what they look like. This pine straw was put down last fall. You can obviously see the cypress from last year, and then eventually the brown mulch that I'll put down. I did around the fire pit already. I'm happy with the way it looks. Again, no issues with the color. I am just used to a hardwood mulch up north, maybe not being this dark, but being a natural brown, and that's what I would prefer, but I just don't have access to that here in eastern North Carolina. So comment below, what kind of mulch do you do? Have you had it delivered before? Usually delivery fees are not too bad, especially if you're getting a lot of cubic yards of mulch. In this case, I made 3 trips to our hardware store. It's only a couple miles down the road. I could have made 2 trips if I knew I was going to get that much. Our minivan can actually hold 30 bags of the mulch, which is pretty impressive. So that's it. Comment below. Do you do mulch? What do you use? What have you had success with? I mentioned everything from leaf mold to grass clippings to cypress to hardwood. The one thing I didn't mention was compost. You can use compost as a mulch as well. I'll do another video later, but you can see the roses are quickly recovering. Lots of green and lots of purple in the garden. So we are rocking and rolling here. We'll get by this next frost, hopefully pretty unscathed, and we have a lot of potential here. You can see a lot of healthy green leaves and purple leaves. We're ready to rock and roll here as we get into eventually May, and we'll start to see some of these blooming out. I'll last leave you. I already showed you some of this. Our Encore azaleas are blooming. They're not as big of a bush as a normal azalea, but with these, they bloom 3 times a year if you have a cooler climate. Here it's hot, so they bloom in the spring and they'll bloom again in the fall. So very, very pretty blooms. You can't beat that. The bush is not nearly as big leaf-wise as your traditional azalea. So azaleas are quite popular in the South, including us here in North Carolina. And then it just looks like sticks now, but you can start to see some green. That is our crepe myrtle. They tend to bloom in the early part of the summer. That's our old compost pile, if you've been following along from before. So that's it. You can tell with all those bags of mulch, I better get at it. And incidentally, notice all this dirt in between the beds. The Roundup has worked. My next goal is to put sod down in between these beds here. This was 100% weeds, and I'm hoping that eventually it will, once I put the sod down, it'll look a little bit more professional in between the rose beds, not just on the one side, but on this side as well. Hope all is well. I look forward to seeing your comments about mulch below. As always, I appreciate new subscribers, so please share with others that are interested in growing roses. Take care.